says it belongs, freedom becomes real. Welcome back to Glow's Lessons from the Garden. My name is Gloria Cassell, if you're joining me for the first time. And today I want to do something a little different. I don't want to start by teaching anything. I want to tell you the truth about me, because if you've been following me recently, you probably heard me talking about saying rest in peace to rest, to exhaustion, to uncertainty, to stagnation, and to wasted harvest. And those aren't just catchy phrases I came up with for social media. I lived every single one of them. There was a version of me who was exhausted. There was a version of me who didn't know what she was supposed to do next. There was a version of me who experienced some growth and then got completely stuck. And there was a version of me who finally received a little harvest. And I spoiled it. So when I tell you I see you, I understand, me too, I mean it. And maybe today, somewhere inside my story, you're going to recognize your own. There was a time in my life when exhaustion wasn't an occasional occurrence. I was a single mother. I was maintaining a home. I was working multiple jobs. I was a caregiver for my father. I had responsibilities. People depended on me. And bills didn't care whether I was tired or not. Life didn't stop because Gloria needed a break. And I know what it's like to be running on E. I know what it's like to drink coffee or energy drink because you aren't drinking for enjoyment. You're drinking it because you're thinking, I need to stay coherent enough to get through this next shift. And then you get through that shift, only to remember everything waiting for you when you get home. And here's what made it so dangerous for me. I thought that was responsibility. I thought being responsible meant handle it, carry it, figure it out. Don't drop anything. Keep moving. And when you've lived like that for so long, exhaustion can start feeling normal. You don't necessarily wake up one morning and say, I've lost myself. It's something that happens gradually. You stop doing certain things. You stop enjoying certain things. You stop asking yourself what you need because everyone else's needs seem to be more urgent than your own. And one day you realize, I don't even know where Gloria went. I was there. And eventually I reached a place where something inside of me had to say, enough. Not, I need a weekend off. Not, I need a vacation. Not, I need another energy drink or coffee. Just enough. I cannot continue living like this. And if that's where you are today, I want you to hear something from somebody who has actually been there. I see you. Not because I've read about exhaustion because I lived it. And I had to learn another way. But exhaustion wasn't my only story, because when I wasn't carrying everything, sometimes I was trying everything. There was something I used to say about myself, because I must say I have been blessed with many talents and many gifts. But it came to a point where I started questioning, why do I have to be the jack of all trades and master of none? Anybody else resonate with that? Because I could do a lot. I had plenty of ideas. My creativity was insane. I had interest in a lot and a lot of opportunities. And I could start something. And then something else looked more interesting. So I'll go over there. Then I'll get another idea. And I'll go over there. And then another possibility appeared over there. And I'll start, stop, move, change, try something else. And this doesn't only happen in business. Somebody listening has done it with their jobs and careers. You get one job, then you're looking at another career. Or maybe it can be relationships, maybe school. Maybe it is businesses. Maybe it's ideas. Maybe it's the church you attend. Or maybe it's your projects. Whatever it is, you keep moving. And eventually, you look around and think, why isn't anything becoming established? That's what something I had to confront in myself. Because eventually you have to distinguish between being multi-gifted and being unrooted. Because those aren't necessarily the same thing. And having the ability to do many things doesn't mean I'm supposed to do all of them. And I had to learn how to become more intentional. Like, what deserves my attention? What deserves my time? What deserves to be cultivated? And perhaps even more importantly, what doesn't? Because every opportunity isn't necessarily an assignment. And every idea doesn't necessarily need to become a business. And every seed doesn't necessarily belong in my soil. I had to learn that. And maybe you're learning it right now. Maybe you're not exhausted. Maybe you're simply uncertain. You know there's more. You know something needs to happen. But you got so many possibilities around you that you don't know which direction deserves your attention. And I understand, because I've been there too. And then came another lesson, because there were times when I actually did plant something and it actually grew. And that's the important part, because sometimes we talk about stagnation in our lives as though somebody never started. And that's not always true, because sometimes you did start it. Sometimes you did do the work. And sometimes you even got results from it. But a lot of times you got stuck. And I've experienced that in business. I had a business, many businesses, and people did come. And I helped a lot of people with my services. And I served people. And I gave. And I gave. And I gave. But I didn't know how to take the growth I had experienced and develop it into something sustainable. And eventually, I had to acknowledge something very important. And that was, I was giving away more than the revenue I was bringing in. And at some point, you have to ask yourself, is this actually functioning as a business? Or have I actually created a community service? And there is nothing wrong with community service. Service is a beautiful thing, and giving is as beautiful. And helping people is exactly why we were placed here on earth to do. But if you establish a business, that business also has to become capable of sustaining itself. And I didn't understand all of that then the way I understand it now. So there I was. I had planted the ideas and something grew of it, but I didn't know what to do with the growth. I didn't know what came next. And that can be incredibly a frustrating place to be, because maybe you've experienced it somewhere else. Maybe you progress in your career and now you're wondering, okay, what's next? Maybe you accomplish one financial goal, but you can't seem to get beyond it. Maybe you've been building something for years and it has reached the same level over and over again. You're not at the beginning anymore, but you aren't where you thought you'll be either. And eventually you start calling yourself stuck. And I've been there too. And I had to learn that experiencing growth and knowing how to steward growth are two different skills. And this brings me to probably the most uncomfortable one, because there were also times when I got what I wanted. I received some harvest. Money did come in. Opportunities came in. Things worked. things I had planted actually produced something. And do you know what I did sometimes? I spoiled it. There it is. I can admit that today. I didn't always save. I didn't always prepare. I didn't always properly tend to what had come into my hands. And I didn't always share the way I should have. And sometimes I spent it. And then another season arrived and I wasn't prepared for it. And that's a hard lesson because we're taught how to get it. How do I make more money? How do I get the promotion? How do I grow the business? How do I get the opportunity? How do I accomplish the goal? But there's another question a lot of people don't ask. And that's, what are you going to do when it do arrive? Because receiving something doesn't automatically make you prepared to manage it. And I had to learn that. I had to learn preparation. I had to learn saving. I had to learn stewardship. I had to learn that everything that comes into my hands isn't necessarily supposed to be consumed immediately. I had to learn that today's harvest may have something to do with preparing me for tomorrow. And that lesson, I wish I had understood it much earlier on. But I understand it now. And because I've experienced the consequence of doing it one way, I can choose to live differently today. And this is where these stories eventually started coming together for me. Because for years, these look like separate experiences. You know, exhaustion was one of my problems, and uncertainty became another. Once stagnation hit, I saw that as its own issues. And me spoiling and not learning about stewardship, that was a whole different level of problems. But once I began looking more closely at something I had already spent years working with, and that's creation, because I've spent more than 15 years cultivating, gardening, and observing how things grow. And eventually, I started noticing that creation wasn't simply teaching me about plants anymore, because God was teaching me about life. And I realized creation doesn't try to do everything at the same time. There are rhythms, there are processes, and there are seasons it follows. And there are times when different things are required. And suddenly, parts of my own story started making sense. And I began recognizing why some of the ways I had been living weren't producing flourishing harvests. And here's what's important. I'm not telling you that I arrived. I'm telling you I learned how to live differently. I learned how to recognize patterns I couldn't recognize before. I learned how to ask different questions. I learned that sometimes what I thought was the problem was actually the symptoms. And eventually, everything I was learning began coming together into what became the 4 seasons of alignment. And we are gardens. And this is why my mission changed. Because once you've been exhausted and you learned another way, you can recognize exhausted people differently. And once you've been uncertain, you recognize a person jumping from thing to another different thing. And once you've experienced growth and then stagnation, you recognize somebody who's asking, why am I not further along differently? And once you've spoiled some harvest yourself, you don't have to look down on somebody else who's still learning stewardship. You can say me too, because I know that road. And that's why I develop a program for people just like us, you and I. And not because I think I know everything about your life, because I don't. And I'm certain I'm not going to diagnose where you are from one symptom you may currently be experiencing. And that's precisely why I created an assessment. But I built a guided journey that brings together education and reflections, practical tools, a support system, and community that help you identify where you are today, your lived experiences, and begin tending to your life differently. Because I believe you can be responsible and flourish at the same time. You can have dreams and become established. You can experience growth and learn how to sustain it. And you can receive a harvest and learn how to steward and save for tomorrow. And perhaps flourishing isn't about doing everything. Maybe it's about finally understanding, what does this part of my journey actually require of me? So I want to leave you with one question today, and not what season you're in, because I don't want you guessing that. Here's my question. What are you finally ready to say rest in peace to? Is it exhaustion? Is it uncertainty? Is it the stagnation? Or is it mishandling what's already been placed in your hands? Maybe today simply is your enough is enough moment. Because mine didn't happen because somebody handed me a perfect blueprint. It happened because eventually I became willing to acknowledge that I can't keep living the same way and expect to flourish differently. And if something I shared today made you say, Gloria, that's me, I want you to know something. I see you. I understand. Because in one form or another, I've been there too. And have I taken what I've learned and I created something to help people just like us navigate these pieces differently. So when you're ready to, you can visit my website, Gloria D. Cassell. I'll drop the link in this description of the podcast so you can look at what I created. And if it speaks to you where you are, begin there. Because maybe it's finally time to put something to rest in your life. So something else in your life can begin to flourish. I'm Gloria Cassell. This has been Glow's Lessons from the Garden. And this is where we need to tend to us because we are gardens. I'm going to leave you guys with a track from my Freedom album. You can find my album right here on Spotify. If you just click on my name, Gloria D. Cassell, in a search, it should pull up my Freedom album. Until next time, remember, we are gardens. Tend to you, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode. Take care.
I was carrying the weight of the world on my back, walking through the fire, trying not to crack, trying to hold it steady, trying to play it cool, till I learned that control was never my rule. Then I heard a whisper cut through the night, lay it down, daughter, it's alright. I was tired, worn, breathing slow, trying to run a race I wasn't made to go. But peace stepped in with a velvet grace. Now I'm moving softer, found my place.
The government's on his shoulders, not mine to hold, not mine to bear. I let it go, I got my composure, found my peace right there. The yoke is easy, the burden's light. When I stop fighting, I see the light. This is freedom, this is peace, this is kingdom, sweet release. Seek first the kingdom, let his love reign. Everything I lost he gave again. Not by power, not by might, but by love that shines through night.
Yeah, I'm free. This is alignment, this is peace.
Demons on his shoulders, not mine to hold, not mine to bear. I let it go, I got my composure, found my peace right there. The yoke is easy, the burden's light. When I stop fighting, I see the light. This is freedom, this is peace, this is kingdom, sweet release. I let it go, I got my composure, found my peace right there. The yoke is easy, the burden's light. When I stop fighting, I see the light. This is freedom, this is peace, this is kingdom, sweet release, sweet release. Seek first the kingdom, let his love reign. Everything I lost, he gave again. Not by power, not by might, but by love that shines through night. Yeah, I'm free.